Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. It is now in order to consider amendment number 66, printed in Part F of House Report 118-216. For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 66, printed in Part F of House Report number 118-216, offered by Mr. Tiffany of Wisconsin.
Pursuant to House Resolution 723, the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Tiffany, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, my bipartisan amendment ensures that none of the funds made available by this bill will go towards funding a rule that will ban flavored milk like chocolate milk in schools. This would ensure that all types and flavors of milk are available to school children. This summer, it was reported that the USDA is considering banning chocolate milk from elementary and middle schools. USDA issued a proposed rule in February that would set new nutrition standards for school meals. If implemented, the new standards proposed could limit the amount of flavored milk like chocolate and strawberry in high schools, while children in elementary and middle schools would be restricted to a variety of unflavored milk. This rule would affect roughly 30 million students who participate in the school meal programs. According to the Journal of the American Dietetic Association, removing flavored milk from schools resulted in a 62 to 63% reduction in milk consumption by kids in kindergarten through 5th grade, as well as a 50% reduction in 6th through 8th grades. Milk is full of rich nutrients that support bone growth and development, and millions of children enjoy drinking it. We should not be funding rules that would limit our children's access to delicious and nutritious products like milk. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this bipartisan amendment, and I reserve.
Purpose is the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition.
Mr. Chairman, I seek the time in opposition.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, this amendment, as the gentleman from Wisconsin has said, prohibits funds from being used to finalize, implement, administer, or enforce the milk section of USDA's proposed rule that aligns nutrition standards to the 2020 Dietary Guidelines for Americans. This appropriations rider is preemptive as the final rule hadn't even been released by the department, and it's out of place because this issue should be taken up within the context of a child nutrition reauthorization, not an appropriations rider. But this amendment disregards the normal scientific process currently being undertaken to establish the nutrition guidelines. School meals and beverages are required to be consistent with the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, which are evidence-based recommendations set to provide nutritional guidance. This amendment would effectively undermine the unbiased, evidence-based process that ensures that children receive the most nutritious meals and replaces that scientifically based process with a political process. It is critical that science continue to guide the process in determining options in school, and the regulations are updated to align with the newest dietary guidelines using a process that intentionally allows for adaptations in line with the latest scientific and expert recommendations. Importantly, the Department of Agriculture specifically has requested public feedback on their proposed milk options for consideration when crafting the final rule. But the bottom line is that scientific experts, not politicians, should be the ones to determine the nutrition standards and ensure that our children get the healthiest meals possible. A dozen organizations, including the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the American Heart Association have all urged Congress to continue to respect the scientific-based process and not interfere with the normal procedure. For these reasons, I urge a no vote on the amendment. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to recognize my friend and neighbor in the 3rd Congressional District of Wisconsin, Mr. Van Orden, for 1 minute.
The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
I rise today in support of this amendment. Thank you, Tom and Mr. Speaker, which will continue the allowance of flavored milk in school nutrition programs. Dairy products deliver nutrients critical to children's health and development. Milk is the top source of protein, calcium, potassium, phosphorus, and vitamin D for children ages 2 to 11. Dairy also provides nutrients vital for immune health. Unfortunately, children are not consuming enough dairy to benefit from these essential nutrients. Removing flavored milk from schools only deters school-aged children from drinking milk even more, and ask my colleague to support this amendment to continue to fully allow non-fat and low-fat flavored milks in grades K through 12 to ensure our children have access to nutrients that they need. And I would say to my Democrat colleagues on the other side of the aisle that we must be cautious when we're speaking about conflating politics with science, and we've learned that over the last 3 years. With that, I yield back.
Yields back. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman has the only time remaining.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania for 1 minute.
I thank my friend Mr. Tiffany for the amendment, and I want to, with him, speak on behalf of parents and children, not on behalf of politicians and so-called scientists. This is what we know. We shouldn't even be having this conversation because we didn't enact this federal government to ban things from us. We want to make the decisions. Children want to make the decisions. Parents want to make the decisions. We know what's best for us. We don't need them to tell us. We'll figure it out ourselves. And over the course of a couple hundred years, we've done pretty well here without scientists and politicians telling us and our children what's good or what's bad. Let me tell you what's good and what's bad. What's bad is school lunches today. You know how I know? Because kids don't want to eat them. So all the nutrition they're getting, they're not getting because they don't want them. The only time they're going to eat them is if it's the only thing that they've got to eat, and you're limiting that now. It's absurd. And I so thank the gentleman from Wisconsin for offering it. I hope that we win this amendment and kids and parents can finally make choices for themselves. I yield back.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania. Mr. Speaker, in many ways, this may be the least of the amendments that you will hear tonight, but it's actually, I would say, the most of the amendments. And here's the reason why. Because when you have a federal government that believes that they need to regulate the milk that is served in our kids' schools across America, you have a federal government that is out of control. When you have a federal government that has a border that we've become a borderless country, when our federal government has become perhaps the largest human trafficking operation in the history of the world, when you have a federal government that will not take us back to energy independence, where gasoline is now back up to $4 a gallon, where I live in northern Wisconsin, when you have a federal government that has fueled inflation like we haven't seen for 40 years, what in the world are they doing? What in the world are they doing trying to regulate what milk is served in our kids' schools? And that's why we're here tonight trying to pass these amendments, because they get America back into a place of fiscal responsibility, but also sanity from what we have seen over the last couple years with this profligate spending that's been going on. And finally, I would just like to say that I come from America's dairyland, and you damn right I'm going to fight for milk in our kids' schools. I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
Question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Wisconsin. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.